I'm not sure if you heard about this, but the 2016 election was completely bananas. Trump and Hillary were actually only part of it, as there were other characters from Bernie and Jeb to Marco and Ted. The election also caused the implosion of the mainstream media and set us on a path that has hashtag MAGA racing towards hashtag resistance, with the rest of us caught right in the middle. Ohio Governor John Kasich was one of the more moderate voices in a campaign season that was short on moderation. As a fiscally conservative, socially liberal Republican, I see Kasich as someone who has some of the right ideas, but whose timing just wasn't right for the madness of 2016. Kasich's team reached out to us a couple days ago, and we have him in studio today, totally unscripted and unedited, with no advanced knowledge of the topics or questions. I think this is exactly the way we need to be hearing from our politicians, and I hope that this interview helps steal us in on these conversations in the near future. Joining me today is the author of the new book, Two Paths, America Divided or United, a former Republican presidential candidate, and the current governor of the great state of Ohio, Governor John Kasich. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
That's a really good television voice.
How was that?
When we were just sitting here, you were kind of normal, and then you were like, dude, it was like Ted Baxter. Very good.
Ah, Ted Baxter. I like the reference. That did not go over me. Well, I like this.
Of course, everybody else watching, they don't know who he is. But that's okay. They could Google it.
Some of my millennial people won't get it, but they should Google who Ted Baxter is. That would be good for them. So first one, I wanted to start with you. I'm incredibly excited you're here. And it's interesting because your people reached out to us about 4 days ago. They said the governor would like to come in. And then we quickly set this up. Nobody said, oh, we have to talk about this or we can't talk about this. You sat down here about 2 minutes ago and you said whatever you want to do is fine. And I feel like that is partly what's lost in politics right now, that we're going to just do this.
Well, it's not just lost in politics. I see it lost in a lot of things. I met with this big car company, and like they had these guys come in to see me, and it was like they were totally scripted. And so I think, life is having fun. Life is, being able to be real. And the reason why we wanted to do this is I actually kind of saw part of one of your shows, and this media is really amazing. A lot of people don't get it, and I'm starting to get it. And I have some people around me who say, this is really a way to keep your voice out there. That's what I want to be able to have, a constructive, positive voice to help our country. And this is another avenue that I'm glad no one else has found it yet in my profession.
Yeah.
So we can be a first mover, which I really like. And I like the fact that we can actually have a conversation longer than just a couple sound bites.
Yeah. Do you ever worry that because we've lost the ability to do this, that the soundbite world is what's causing so many of the problems?
Well, that was what happened in the campaign. It was all, we didn't do it, but these other campaigns, and I had advice from some people who had run before, make sure you get your little thing out there so you can blow up the television morning news, and it's like tricks, that's not a good thing. And look, people, I saw a thing on a sign yesterday. It said, "Email me, please. We have to talk."
Exactly.
Yeah. I think look. I didn't have a smartphone for a long time. I've had an iPad, and I got it in the very beginning, but I didn't have a smartphone, and people would laugh at me. But I didn't need this stuff during the day. I didn't need to have basketball scores or look at the weather 25 times or some kind of headline in the news. Or my emails, because I have people that can, tell me if there's a crisis. They tell me, I go, okay, well, let's see what it is. But I got my smartphone, and now the best thing about it is that I can text. But I find that when I text, what it does is it creates a laziness, right? You don't have to go through a conversation.
Yeah.
Now, don't you think? Look, you have a show here where people talk.
This is what
do you think about it? Don't you think this is a problem?
I think that resetting our ability to talk and actually think and sit across from somebody and make some eye contact and really try to understand what they think, I think that is almost the most important thing that we've given up in these last couple of years. It was the trade-off between all these devices and the immediate response.
So what do we do about it?
This. I mean, I honestly think that you coming here right now and your people being brave enough to say, the governor,
it's not like I have my
sit down.
people. You know, these are people that work around and kind of support me and help me. They're friends, and but this whole, you know, sort of funny. You go on these shows on regular television, which I think are really important, and you get, you know, 2 million people to see you. But if you're like hanging out with Logan Paul, he's got 16 million subscribers. It's like, and you know, the funny thing about it is that people can't see it really. Now, but that's not really true, because I think probably you're in demand now, and you can go out and make talks and people show up to see you. But it's kind of an invisible world to those who were kind of hooked on television. Right, you understand what I mean by that? I
do. So how do we bridge that?
I don't know, but I just did What's News. Right now. You know, I think it's called What's News. It was really fantastic, and there were a couple million views, and I liked it. You just have to keep doing it. It's part of why I wanted to be here. I mean, look, I pull up here. You've got a studio in your garage. It's cool. It's neat, and you don't have to go very far, right?
My commute's about 10 feet that way.
But the hard thing has got to be getting compelling guests. That's got to be a hard thing to do. How do you go about doing that?
Well, fortunately, a lot of people are coming to this medium now. And a lot of the guests, you asked me right before we started all these books here. I mean, most of I think, virtually every single one except the Carl Sagan book.
Are there any of them that are interesting?
Oh, there's
they look
a lot
like
of them.
They're pretty boring myself.
No, there's some great books there by many of my guests, from Steven Pinker and Sam Harris and Scott Adams and plenty of others.
I see you have one here on John Adams. That's good.
We did a President's Week a couple weeks ago, John Adams.
So you're getting good people to come.
Yeah, we're getting.
Was it? You know, a lot of times when I am with the press, I'm actually curious about them, and they don't like it when I'm asking them stuff. Okay, but it must have been hard in the beginning, right?
I mean, it's hard to build anything. I mean, you know that. But one of the things that I consistently tell my audience is it's cool that a lot of the beliefs that I have, I fall a little more within classical liberalism and libertarianism. A lot of the beliefs about doing things for yourself, and I've built this business with the same ideas that I try to talk about here. Some of which I think we're going to get to, and it's kind of a beautiful thing.
Not if I keep
Not if you keep going. All right, let me ask you a couple of questions as long as you're here. So I thought we talked just a little bit about growing up, what kind of family you grew up in. I feel like people never do that in politics anymore. We go to immediately what
Well, everybody kind of mocks me because I say my father was a mailman, and so the people write that and they're like cynical and all that. But I grew up in a town that was I don't think I ever met a Republican, not in my town. My Uncle Harry was a Republican, they say, but we didn't listen much to him. He's a great guy, but, you know, it was blue collar, and, you know, it was sort of some of these people you would define as kind of the Trump people, you know, who felt they've been left behind. So, you know, as a result of that, I guess that's why I'm a populist, but a positive populist, not a negative populist. Positive, that we can do it, we can together, we can rise. And that's a great place to come from, because you really have a sense of people, you know, and it's not just the upper crust. We respected the upper crust. I can remember saying to my father one time, Daddy, what about the rich? He said, well, we don't hate the rich, we want to be the rich, you know. And so it was great. God-fearing, conservative Democrat, good values. Faith was a part of my early childhood, which I normally drifted away from when I went to college, you know. Well, it's like Augustine, he says, you know, I know I need to be committed to God, but just not right now. I have a couple parties to go to. So, you know, we all drift away, and I've come roaring back into that. But common sense, right? Freewheeling. Sometimes it puts people off a little bit, the way I am, because I'm pretty direct. But the other thing is, I was telling somebody the other day that, you know, I don't want people to be confused about my positions on anything. And so if somebody says, well, I think it's blue, and I might say, well, no, I think it's red. And most people would expect me to say, okay, well, I'll consider that. And I'm like, no, I just don't think that. And I think to some degree people don't get it. So it takes a little bit of time for people to come to understand me.
Yeah, all right, well, that's what we're going to do here for the next hour. So you mentioned a couple interesting things there. So you didn't grow up in a Republican family per se, and then you just used the phrase conservative Democrat.
Yeah.
So one of the things I talk a lot about here is that it seems to me before we get into your party, that the conservative Democrat or the blue dog Democrat or sort of the moderate Democrat.
Yeah. A lot of them were buddies of mine in Congress. Great friends.
Do they really exist anymore?
I think this young man in Pennsylvania is blue dog Democrat, from what I can see. Now, he got elected at 33, I think. I was 30, so he's kind of old.
Old-timer, yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think that, I think in both parties, it's really hard. If you're a Republican, you got to fear the right, and if you're a Democrat, you fear the left, and it just pulls everybody apart. Yeah. We know that, though.
But you've managed to kind of work through something that's sort of centrist, right? Somehow.
Well, I don't know what that means. You know, one guy once told me the only thing that goes down the middle of a road are yellow lines and dead skunks. Okay, and I'm not but I'm a common sense person.
Well, I guess that's what it is.
And look, I look at an issue and say, okay, what do we do about it? Or we look at a problem, how do we fix the problem? But I'm not really going to have an ideological force that's pulling me back. But at the same time, being a conservative, I want to see what the solutions are without having to bring bureaucracy or government in. And I'll tell you why that is. It's because government inherently is so subject to political considerations that people have a hard time calling a spade a spade. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, I got all these pressures, and I don't like that. And so when you go to government, you can get trapped, but you get trapped with big business too. Big business, you try to, like, I need this prescription, and somebody out here is telling me, oh, no, it costs too much. Big things like that have always bothered me. Big institutions, whether it's government. I grew up, my dad was in a union. I always like unions, but the problem with the unions is when the union boss is not representing the worker. Mm-hmm. And so big institutions don't thrill me. Where am I? Kind of unpredictable. See, because you kind of labeled yourself a little bit ago. You said, well, I'm this and that. If you ask me what I am, I'll say I'm a conservative, but then you will say, well, but why do you think this or that? And because I don't think we need to be stuck, right? Yeah. Being stuck in life is really depressing.
All right, so tell me about what does being a conservative basically mean to you then?
Again, government is a last resort, not as a first resort, but I also don't think it's like no government, mm-hmm.
How do you decide where that stops?
You use judgment, and you have good people around, and you think about things. And we're trying to price something right now in our state. Somebody wants access to stuff in our state. Okay, it's a good thing. It's a good thing what they want, but I don't know what the value of it is. Okay, so I can't just look at what governments have done to determine the value, because I don't have a whole lot of, I don't invest a lot in that. Mm-hmm. I want to go out and talk to a variety of people in business to say, what do you think this is worth? Okay, and so how do I do that? I have people that come in and they talk and they argue for certain things, but at the end, I have to decide. So I just use as good a judgment as I can.
Yeah. Do you have a certain leeway when it comes to sort of thinking for yourself as a governor that maybe the senators and the congressmen can't have, because they have to not that you don't have to come together and work with people, but they have to do it with people outside of their state with massively competing interests and things like that?
I was offering budgets against Republican presidents. I mean, just do your job. I mean, why would you want to have a television show where you don't make it real? Why would I want to be in politics no matter where I am and not make it real? I mean, what would I be there for? It's really stupid, right? Yeah. I mean, if you're not.
But I think there's a lot of people there for that.
Well,
stupid reason.
I don't want to be casting aspersions or judging them only for me. Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? I mean, so we had a decision on Medicaid expansion, right, in Ohio. You know that. You know what Medicaid expansion was?
Of course.
Right. So Jan Brewer in Arizona did it, which really was kind of shocking to me. But I was really the first big Republican governor to expand it. Was it hard? No, it was a piece of cake. If I'm going to get money that's not going to put me in a straitjacket from the federal government, if I can use that money to help heal, or to help the mentally ill, so they're not sleeping under a bridge or living in a jail, or if I can help people who have drug addiction to get treatment and get off of it, if I can have a lower uninsurance rate, why wouldn't I do that? And because people are going to yell at me and fight, so what? Who cares? I mean, I care. I don't want them to I don't want them to be angst. In fact, in my State of the State address, I made a talk that really had almost nothing to do with policy. It all had all to do with basically philosophy and the meaning of life. They say it was the only State of the State speech delivered by a governor in the history of the world where the name Camus was discussed, you know. But and I didn't mention that because I don't want to jab anybody in the eye. But the decision to do that, to help people, it's such an easy decision.
Do you find you have a little bit of an extra freedom right now because you can't run for re-election in Ohio? Now there's a lot of talk of 2020, which I want to end this interview on.
Well, look, I mean, probably so. But I've always been very independent. You know, I was a military reformer. I was offering my own budgets against President Bush. I took on corporate welfare reform. Couldn't find a Democrat with a searchlight, and the Republicans ran the other way. No, I've always pretty well felt that, you know, you got to do what you have to do. And am I more free now? Maybe a little bit, but nothing would change. I mean, I don't know what is it I would reverse. I wouldn't say, well, we're not going to do this Medicaid thing. Yeah. Now, if it got us into a point where we were, you know, fiscally at risk, I would have to stop it. I've told everybody that. But no, I don't really think so. But I am having probably more fun now. You know, having a lot of fun.
No, I mean, I can tell.
But I've been having fun. Clearly. You know, I ran for re-election, and I never even used the word Obama. Running for re-election, never talked about it. I just talked about our record, and it was fun, and it was positive. Look, here's the thing, and we all need to know this. We all need to be healers in one way or another. We need to heal our family and our friends and strangers. I'm not that great a guy, okay, but I know that that makes sense, and I know that it's right. So it's just a cool thing to think about, and that's why politics is so boring to me, because it's all these calculations and all this crap. Why don't we just do a job? Let's think about how to pull the country together. Let's make sure that we can help people to be lifted. Let's not tear somebody down. Elizabeth Warren wants to tear down all these rich people. I don't know why, or Bernie or whatever. I used to work with Bernie. You don't need to tear people down. We need to just build people up and put them together.
Yeah. Did you ever get into any of those philosophical discussions with Bernie? Because the class warfare thing I see as extremely dangerous. No,
I wouldn't have that conversation with Bernie. When Bernie and I were in the house together, he was, you know, really kind of in another orbit. We all thought he was. And yet, you know, the country's kind of moved towards him. And I think a lot of young people are, you know, the one thing that is concerning to me, and I have great faith in the millennials and the Gen Xers, but I'm not sure they understand the consequences of losing a representative democracy. There seems to be, with some of them, some appeal towards an authoritarian figure. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I think you're
absolutely
you have to tell
right.
me. Yeah.
I haven't studied it, but I've got that sense. That's not good. Or that, you know, maybe socialism will work. Look, in a free enterprise system, Michael Novak, the great philosopher, theologian, said that a free market system that is not underlaid with a set of values is bankrupt. So you have to have values. You can't just be in it to make money. There has to be something else there.
Where do you think those values come from?
Oh, I think that the easy thing to say, politically easy thing to say, is they come from mom and dad. And I say to people, well, where do you think mom and dad got it from?
Right,
how far back? They got it from their parents. Where do I think these virtues come from? Look, if you're a humanist, I respect you, okay? You wake up every day trying to figure out how to make the world a little better place. I like that, okay? But for me, the winds of change, the fads, can knock me off my path. So I need something deeper than that. So I look to theologians, and I believe that we are a unique form of life, greater than all other life on the earth. And I think that life is given to us by our Creator, and I think our Creator has a character that we can learn about, and that's not only held by a Christian, but also a Jew and also a Muslim. We have the same kind of view of creation and our purpose. And within those values are things like mercy and justice and compassion and forgiveness and, I don't know if you play golf, that we have to have mulligans in life because and the danger of talking about these things is that people want to say, oh, well, you don't have great values, I caught you. Well, yeah, of course, I'm just a slob on a bus trying to make it through life, but I kind of know what I need to do. So I think that these values, they flow from our Creator. And I think too much in religion today, which has turned off a lot of young people. I'm actually mentoring a young man in faith, but it's not about all this judgment we hear. It's about hope. It's about human connectiveness, and that's appealing to people. And it's what I think is true about faith and virtue. It's not confining, it's enlarging. It doesn't make you smaller, it makes you bigger. And today in religion, we see a lot of forces that are counter to that, and I don't like it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me because my audience knows that Thomas Jefferson was my favorite founder, and I go to the Jefferson Memorial often in D.C., and I try to read those big plaques, and to me they're as relevant now as they were, 200 some odd years ago, where he talked about, they talk about a creator at the same time they're talking about why church and state have to be separate.
Sure they do.
And I think that's really to the heart of what you're saying right
now. I think, first of all, we don't want the government being involved in religion. We don't want that. We want, though, in a free society, look, freedom means we have to learn to self-govern. And if every time we turn around, this is a big thing about Facebook now. They didn't self-govern, right? I mean, we can pass all these rules, but, guys like you and me were born to figure out how to get around the rules, okay, right? I mean, want to be free.
That's why we're both here,
right.
for some reason.
But what I'm saying is that you can't, if you're going to have freedom, people have to have self-restraint. And the less self-restraint we have, the more the government tries to impose things, and the more they impose things, the less freedom we have. So I don't want it, I believe that our faith system, and again, if you're a humanist, that's cool with me, that's fine with me. Because you're trying to do good every day. It can't work for me because I get too knocked off kilter by the culture today and the winds of change. But with that system, it reinforces the sense of freedom.
So it's interesting, you've referenced culture a couple times, and one of the things that seemed pretty obvious from an outside perspective of the 2016 election was that Trump captured the culture. Good or bad, he captured that. He captured the internet culture, the reason that you're
Look, he didn't win by a lot.
Right,
it's like 80,000 votes. So we have to keep it in perspective.
And Trump is
he's a negative populist. I'm a positive populist. The people that I grew up with, when they're out of work or whatever, my message is, this is terrible, but let's go fix it. I think the negative populist message is, well, you're out of work because that guy over there took it away from you. He took your stuff away. And that creates a bitterness and an anger. And there's also a sense that can translate into victimhood. I'm a victim. Would you ever like to be a victim?
I do not want to be a victim.
No, but it's easy to be a victim, don't you think?
It's very easy.
Particularly if you have other people around that want to be a victim. Now, I'm not going to condemn them. But it's easy to fall into that if somebody tells you you don't have something because somebody else took it. So what we need to do is, if you were to go to, say, Youngstown, Ohio, they talk about that a lot in national news, and I was a steel worker, or I worked in a coal mine in West Virginia, or whatever. We have in Ohio, working with one of the tech companies, we have a list of all the job openings. Okay, now if you're a victim and I come to you and I say you were a coal miner or you were a steel worker, and this would be hard for me, so listen, I can show you this internet stuff, right? And I can get you one of these jobs. You don't have to become an expert, but I can show you stuff. If I'm a victim, I may not want to do it. But if I give that person a message, hey, look at these jobs. It pays good money. Your family will be will be healthier. Your children will be healthier. You will have more self-respect. But it's tough where you are. That is the better message than, well, you're just a victim and we're going to go and punish people, right? It doesn't work for the good for the mental health of our society.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great phrase right there, because we seem to be in a mental health
I just came up with that.
deficit.
That's pretty good. Could you write that one?
I don't have a pen
Yeah,
with me,
okay.
but
All right. Well, we can go back and, hey, roll the tape.
Yeah. There's somebody back there with
Remember
a
how
pen,
they used to do that on television? Roll the tape.
Roll the tape. Yeah. We're long past that point.
That's
Roll
right.
the tape. There's no tape anymore. It's all digital. So, but negative populism.
Get the electrons back. Go ahead.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
No. So negative populism. Did you see that train coming? Because it seems to me that Trump grabbed it.
Trump is a manifestation.
Yeah.
He didn't create this. People for a long time have felt that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. People in my party have ignored that. Maybe to some degree early on I did too. I thought, well, what's that all about? But it's true that you see these chasms, and those are dangerous because, you know, we need to believe that all this wealth and everything changes. They say that the ocean always kind of flips upside down, and that's what we need to see in our country, that, you know, people on the bottom can get to the top. And we look at Bezos. Guy selling books out of his garage.
Yeah.
Look at you. It's just a matter of time till you're a billionaire, you know.
Yeah.
We're operating out of this garage. Are you getting close?
He's delivering me a lot of stuff every day.
Yeah, I got
Not
you.
yet.
But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, it is possible to rise in a free society with a free enterprise, and
do you think we stopped selling that correctly? Because as you said
I don't think we
before,
talk about it.
Yeah, that young people now, they starting to think that socialism is cool.
Yeah, I don't get that. I mean, well, because it sounds good. You know, like, let's share. I tell you a really interesting story.
Yeah.
My chief of staff, there's that, you know, that show that you get on your phone at 9 o'clock Eastern. It's like they ask questions and you answer them. My kids have done it for a while. They don't do it anymore. I don't know what the show is called. Well, anyway, she and her kids, 2 daughters, they listen to this every night at 9 o'clock. And they work together. And so she said one day to her kids, why don't I'll be on one phone, and you'll be on your phone, and Joy, you'll be on your phone, and let's have a competition. They looked at her like she was crazy. They're like, why would we do that? You know? So, you know, I guess what I'm saying about that is, the idea of community and together is good, but we don't want that to erode the basic sense that competition is good, as long as it's played fairly.
Yeah. So
and everybody has a chance to compete.
So really what you're talking about, you're sort of talking about individualism and how we can create groups around that, as opposed to collectivism, right?
Yeah.
Is that really the thrust of this?
Write that down. That's a good one. Individual rather than collectivism. But if you're a young person, you go, I don't know what's wrong with that. But look, they're my hope, because they would rather take a job that pays less if the job has meaning. Look at what they're doing in Parkland. Look at what these young people are doing across this country, and using social media to have a voice. I mean, it's really awesome. I mean, it gets me really pumped up. Yeah. Because I think we need a new era of activism and citizenship. And by the way, we fixate all the time on the leader. Okay? Did you see that movie on Churchill, The Darkest Hour?
I didn't see it yet. I just watched The Crown.
Come on.
There's a lot of him in The Crown.
What are you doing?
Gary Oldman, I know. I got to get out there. It's on demand now. I'll do it tonight. Governor John Kasich, I'm giving you my word right now.
You have my word, yes. But anyway, here's the thing.
I'm watching it tonight.
In that movie, and this is made up stuff, he gets on, goes down and gets on the subway. And he's talking to people, and they're like, we're not giving in. And they embolden him, set the fire in him. I'm not telling you that he wasn't a great leader, because clearly he was. But it was a bottom-up and a top-down. I mean, when we think about the civil rights movement, I mean, they didn't. The great leaders, Martin Luther King, they didn't get help. Politicians were afraid of him, including JFK. They were all afraid of him. And what happened? It was from the street up. A lot of social change. The end of the Vietnam War. How much longer would the generals have said we were winning? And by the way, look at Afghanistan. They keep saying, oh, victory's just around the corner. Yeah. Terrible. And so you have a situation here where you can't just expect change in the country because I have a new good coach, so therefore I'm going to win the basketball game. It doesn't work that way. It works both ways. Yeah, good leader, but a great group of people that drive, that drive change.
How dangerous then is that cult of personality that we've now made around the president? And I'm not just talking about Trump here. I mean, even with Obama and plenty of the other presidents, that we think that somehow the executive branch,
is going to fix
really
everything.
This one person is going to fix everything.
Well, there's a book that I don't know I don't know a lot of things up here. I'm giving you
the book might be over here.
No, the book is not here. It is a
here.
book that says this, and I have never talked about this before, like on television. I was with a great preacher. He's got 6,000 people. He's in the Silicon Valley. He's very grace-oriented and hopeful, and he's a PhD in psychology. He's just got all this stuff, all this talent. And I was asking him, I said, I keep telling people it's bottom up, not top down. He said, well, John, it's interesting, because a man wrote a book, and the book says that when pieces of our society start to erode, let's think about it. Facebook, Wells Fargo, Equifax, the scandal around Volkswagen, sports. You got guys that had brain injuries, but the league isn't helping them, and they're living in a car. Mm-hmm. Their families are destitute. Or Hollywood. We need to say anything there.
Yeah.
You look across the board, and we're seeing an erosion of what we really want, right? So there's a tendency, this man maintains, and I'm fascinated to read this book, that we now start looking to politics to solve these problems. In other words, we look at politicians or government to use, in a sense, coercion to restore things to the right balance. And it just doesn't work that way, really, in practicality. Now, I'm the governor of the state, 7th largest state. It's a very powerful executive position. But I can't just give edicts from up here and expect it to work. The people have to be engaged and assent and do things. They have to self-govern. They have to lift. And so this is a very, I think, this is like the next thing to think about. To me, it's the next wave. What I love, what I think has been fun because of my friends and because of my mind and the way it works, I'm kind of always looking for the next thing, and I can kind of sense the next thing, and I believe this is something that really needs to be talked about. I mean, it's virtue, it's religion, it's doing well by doing good, it's driving ourselves from the bottom up, it's not trying to vest all this power in a handful of people in the government, because I think it's futile.
Yeah, I hate to tell you this, but in a weird way, you don't sound like a politician. But I think you could take that as a compliment.
Look, I'm a public official. I'm a CEO of a state. I'm sick of politics. It drives me crazy because I see that in the middle of trying to do things, we're all weak. Everybody's weak, and we're all susceptible to certain pressures, and I'm like, we need to run through that door. And they're like, oh, no, slow down here, and all that kind of stuff. And here's the problem with politics. You could sit next to somebody your entire lifetime in an office job and never really know what they think. But in politics, people get called out. It's really interesting. They get called out. And in some ways, it's not fair because it's almost like an X-ray. Like, you and I could know each other, we could hang out, we could watch basketball games, and never ever get into my finding out how you make decisions in a really tough situation. But with politics, you're going to have to vote, and if you vote wrong, you're afraid you're going to lose. I mean, it really is an amazing process, and it's frustrating.